I found myself in a space where I felt like the walls were closing in and the world was crashing. And I needed help. I was, quite frankly, spiraling, as I think a lot of high achieving individuals do. You get to a point where you need to stop, to just don't know how, and you don't, it's not even in your vocabulary.
Welcome to Mindset Mastery Podcast, where we explore the intersections of motherhood and entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Julissa Edwards, and in each episode, we're diving into mindset, emotional regulation, and the real stories of mom entrepreneurs navigating both business and family life. Let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to another episode on Mindset Mastery with yours truly, Julissa Edwards. So today I get to interview Dr. Ebony Stone, and Dr. Ebony Stone is a dynamic corporate executive scholar, author, and coach who shares her journey as an African American woman navigating the corporate world, both before and after DIE initiatives became mainstream. With 3 degrees, y'all, this woman is a powerhouse, including an MBA and a DBA. Dr. Stone is passionate about learning, yet her most cherished roles are those of wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend, which we talk about deeply in this episode. In her new book, The Power of the Pause, she combines a memoir and practical framework detailing her ascent in the corporate arena and introducing readers to her pause method. Y'all, this intro and this bio is everything that this woman is. It was a pleasure speaking with her this morning, interviewing her, getting to know her. She's a beautiful woman, leader, mother of a beautiful household, and it is just so beautiful to dig deeper into her inner stories and how she has learned so much from being the busy bee hustler that once was to someone that pauses more often, has done a lot of tremendous work in therapy to understand herself better, and then better yet understand other people. This is a book you're going to want to read after you listen to this episode. And yes, I am excited. Without further ado, I really hope you enjoy this episode. Dr. Ebony has an incredible story to share with us. And so I'll kind of prompt it with our first question here. From what we've read and what we've learned, your career journey has been incredibly dynamic, from scholar to corporate executive to author. What inspired you to write The Power of the Pause, and how has pausing shaped your own personal and professional growth?
Yeah, I love this question, mostly because I was inspired to write a book. Initially, it had been on my vision board, right? We all find these vision boards or our version of a vision board. And I was going to write a book about leadership.
Mhm.
And, it was going to be the 10 lessons learned in 30 years or something like that.
Okay.
And then I found myself in a space, even though I was writing and I have an outline, and I will probably still write that book. I have an outline for it. I found myself in a space where I felt like the walls were closing in and the world was crashing. And I needed help. I was, quite frankly, spiraling, as I think a lot of high achieving individuals do. You get to a point where you need to stop, to just don't know how, and you don't, it's not even in your vocabulary, right?
Mm.
It's not something that you do. And so my doctor suggested therapy a couple of times, and I finally went to therapy. And one of the things that has always helped me is just writing. I love to write. And so my therapist wanted to work with that. And so I started to write my story. And then, as a very spiritual person, I felt pushing to share my story. And so I took a lot of what I was writing in therapy and crafted a book from it to share my story. So I've always been inspired to write. I never thought that this would be the book that I would write, right? I have lots of thoughts of books in my mind, but I just never thought this would be the book that I would write. But it's the book that God wanted me to write.
Mhm. I love that. That must, just hearing the kind of how this book got birthed through so much inner depths of your knowingness, going to therapy, learning more about yourself, um, going on this brand new journey of, as therapists, we can call it a number of things, but this deep inner shadow work, you're getting to know yourself in a different lens. And then from that was birthed this book. I can only imagine how vulnerable, truthful, and possibly liberating this book has been for you in the writing process. Would you agree?
Oh my gosh. Listen, let me tell you, getting it out has been amazing,
Mm,
right? Just writing it was cathartic in and of itself,
mm,
just writing it. But to get it out in the world and feel like all of these emotions and feelings and secrets that I was holding are not there anymore is very lightening, right? I've had people literally run into people that I haven't seen in a couple of years, and they're like, "You look so much lighter." Like that is literally the word that they use. And I'm like, yeah, because the weight is lifted. And then to have other people read the book and say, I feel seen, I feel heard. Like this is absolutely amazing. Is even more um, proof to me that it is absolutely what I needed to do.
mm,
I'll be honest. I don't know that this is a book I could have wrote 5 years ago because I was in a different place. When we think about 5 years ago, when the pandemic hit, right? Probably almost exactly 5 years ago, we started to hear about COVID-19.
yes.
And then,
Actually, this time last, it was 5 years
yeah,
ago. Yes, January.
yeah,
Yeah.
yep. And and then about February, it got bad. In March, the world shut down. Right. And so I don't think I could have wrote the book before then because I think I needed to go through that experience in order to be able to write the book and then look back at my life and see every time a challenge happened, how did I come out of that? What did I use to get out of that? I needed that challenge to happen to be able to recognize where I was in my life and how I was running, right? COVID forced the world into a pause, basically, right? And so I think I needed that in order to get to this place.
Yeah. Yeah, you're bringing me back because I'm like, yes, 5 years ago, so much of my content, so much of my speaking engagements were all about people, truth be told, just freaking out because they've never had so much time alone with themselves. In
Yes.
the pandemic, everybody was like, oh my God, I have to listen to my thoughts now. Now, it's like, it was like this forced therapy, if you may, for the world to kind of go into. And it was a lot for a lot of people, especially so much of my career has been focused on, myself included, high achievers, right? The ones that go, 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 can't stop. And yes, COVID was definitely a time where it was a forced stop or a pause in your reference, right? Um, Tell us more. Well, since you went to therapy, so I'm gonna love this conversation. So because you went to therapy, right? You learned so much
Yes.
about yourself. Did you gain a good insight as to why you felt the need to always push and persevere and keep going?
I did. Yep. I very young, very early on, and I talk about my childhood in the book. I connected to this identity that I had to be the smart girl, right? I felt like I had to be the smart girl to get acceptance because you know, in this world, like I never felt like the pretty girl. I wasn't the athletic girl. I wasn't all of these, I wasn't the popular girl. None of those things that I connect to. But what I did know is that I got attention when I was the smart girl, right? I
Mm,
got attention when I got the A's. And
mm,
so I started to connect that to
mm,
my value. And so I constantly chased it. And so now, and it doesn't just go away, right? I'm 50 years old. I turned 50 last April, right? And so that doesn't just go away, but you become aware of it. And
Mhm.
I start to recognize when I'm going into that space of just needing to be perfect, right? That is who I felt I needed to be. And it still happens, right? It absolutely happens. And understanding that my drive for excellence is one thing, but my value as a human being is
Mhm.
something else. If I don't create something that is excellent, that doesn't
Mhm.
mean that I lose value as a human being. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that people love me less, right? And I had to, and am still learning it. I think that people think you get into therapy and you have this aha moment and then it's
Yeah.
all over. And it's
No.
like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
that's not how it works,
Yeah.
right? I got 50 years of stuff that
Yeah.
I'm carrying around with me. And so I'm learning to process that.
So beautiful. I love your distinction of you can be a person who drives for excellence, but that doesn't have to do anything with who you are as a human being and your value and worth as a human being. You know, um, you're absolutely right. This is something that you uncovered, an aha moment in therapy, which I'm sure was phenomenal, amazing, makes you view yourself in the world differently. But just that piece of information alone doesn't heal you. It begins the healing journey, and it's actually almost like a partnership with self and your past self of like, okay, every single time my unconscious behavior start going towards the route of I think I need this to be valuable, then I'll check myself and I'll have a moment to pause and look inward and choose differently or act differently or console myself for going into these patterns again and understanding that it's okay. These have been patterns that have been happening for so many years, and this is a beautiful work of inner child healing. I remember
Absolutely.
when I first came into the field, I was young in my 20s getting my master's, and there was all this research and literature on inner child healing. Well, it wasn't called that back then, it was just like child psychology. Um,
Yes.
but I remember being young and like naive in my own world, and I'm like, not everything stems from your childhood. Like I used to get like annoyed with like the teachers and professors, and I'm like, oh my God, come on, And then it was like one, after unfolding my own stories and also helping so many other people, I was like, wow, no, like seriously, everything really comes back down to these pivotal years in our young life that then as we grow up as an adult, they kind of I don't want to even say shapeshift because they kind of stay true to who they are. You just get older and life gets more complex, but the things that you found important and valuable and that we attach to our character, what we thought made us valuable, important, stays for
Yeah.
years. And it could
Yes.
be blinded until you uncover it. But even when you do
Yes.
uncover it, like yourself, you're still unraveling and unraveling and unraveling more information.
Absolutely. Life is a journey. If we had all the answers, what's the point, right? We don't have all the answers. You know, you talked about we were talking about the pandemic and the pause and people being with their own thoughts. For
Yes.
me, listen, I'll tell people my family means the world to me. Like I think most people, right? The titles that I hold nearest and dearest are wife and mom, right?
Mhm.
Daughter. Those mean the world to me. And I say it all the time. In 2020, I was forced to sit with that. My
Mhm.
children were home. There was no school. They had to be home. My husband is a contractor and couldn't go out to work because he couldn't work in people's homes. So he was home. And so you're like, I'm wife and mom first. I'm wife and mom first. I'm wife and mom first. Yeah, you wife and mom first with everybody in the house. Everybody is, my family is full of extroverted individuals. I am not. And
Mhm.
so I'm here. And then I'm like, I'm having these thoughts that I'm like, am I a bad mom? Because I'm literally like, go away, get
Mhm.
away. Why are you here?
Yeah.
I need a minute, get
Yeah.
away. Um, is when, quite frankly, one of the things that I did during the pandemic was I started gardening and I still garden. And I
Mhm.
wish I could say I went outside and I created a garden because I wanted to eat healthier. I went outside and I created a garden because people would leave me alone. And those
Yeah.
people being my children and my husband,
Yeah.
they would just leave me alone. And so the pandemic caused us to come face to face with a lot of things.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. And I had to come face to face with the fact that sometimes I need a break from my children and my husband, and that doesn't make me a bad mom or a
Yeah.
bad wife.
1000%. Yes. So I want to talk using this information too more about like yes, what the pause framework is in your book and you know, I think we can probably gather, but this kind of came from a life of pushing, pushing, pushing to a point where we couldn't push anymore,
Yeah.
right? And so tell us more about that, please.
Yep, absolutely. So the pause framework is really an acronym for 5 steps to help you when you just need to make a decision and you can't, or you're in a place where you don't know what to do next. And it starts with literally stopping. A lot of times in this 24/7, 365 grind culture, we're taught we just got to go. No,
Mm,
sometimes the strongest thing you can do is sleep. And
mhm,
for me, in that stopping, I need to pray. I need to listen to the voice, listen for the voice of God. So it is pausing and praying, and then analyzing the situation you're in. What is happening? I'll use me being
mhm,
home, right, with my husband and children during the pandemic. What is going on? And recognizing that as an introvert, I need time to recharge by myself. And I've got these extroverts that need to recharge being with people, and I'm that person. And so they're coming to me constantly, analyze what is happening and then
mhm,
understand it. Try to understand why. Understand introversion and extroversion, sure, but I also understand that I created a space where I was their person. I solved all the problems. I needed to understand my part in this. Children
mm,
shut down. A lot of people put their kids like at the dining room table. Not Miss Overachiever Ebony. I took the dining room table out. I turned the dining room into a whole classroom. My kids had bean bags and desks and all the things, the classroom whiteboards and all of that. Well, you created it. They're going to continue to come to you every time they have a problem because that's what you created,
mm,
right? And then create a strategy to come out of that. Now that you have analyzed what happened, you understand what happened, now you got to create a strategy, right? It's not just about moving forward. You really got to think through a strategy. Um, and sometimes it ain't easy. Using that same example, we're 5 years out of that pandemic, and I'm still stopping myself from solving my children's problems, right?
mhm.
Um, and allowing them to learn on their own. And then you execute that strategy and constantly evaluate it,
Yeah.
right? And so that's the framework. And it can be sometimes you push in to something that is huge like that and trying to figure out where you are. And sometimes it's just a quick thing. Like you're in a meeting, people are asking you questions, they want answers now. You can stop and literally say, I want to take all the information in. If you give me to the end of the day, I'll give you an answer, right? That's your pause. And then you
Yes.
have the day to finish things. We don't have to do everything right now. And as
Yes.
high achievers, we think we have to.
As high achievers that are usually riddled with anxiety, we feel like everything's an emergency.
Yes.
We feel like
Yes.
everything is an emergency and everything has to be dealt with right now. Okay, so I love that you are able to use this framework in your home with your family, but also in corporate settings. Absolutely. Please give me to the end of the day to respond with an adequate answer. I don't really know right now. Yeah, I have
Right.
1,000 other things on my mind at the moment, you know? Um, Someone who juggles a lot. So we are learning about your role as a mother, as a wife. What were you doing in corporate? And you also had a business on the side, correct?
Yes. Yes. My husband and
Tell us
I
about all the things.
Yes, my husband and I have run a business in some shape, form, or fashion since we got married 23 years ago.
Okay.
When I left corporate America, my title was executive vice president. I worked in operations. Before that, I worked in learning and development
Mm,
at the senior levels. And so I always was what one of my colleagues used to say, I was always on stage, right? People were always watching. I was always creating strategy for the business and trying to push toward a vision. So that's what I did corporately. But yes, I
Okay.
was running a business. I was trying to balance
What
being
kind
a
of,
mother.
in that role of VP, what were you running? What kind of
So I
business?
worked, yep, I worked in a mortgage company, and
Okay.
so I was running our operations.
Okay.
And so I had, if you're familiar with what happens in mortgage companies, I have processors and underwriters and closers and those types of individuals that rode up to me in that space.
Okay, I'm going to do a quick insight. But when you were sharing, immediately my thought was, oh, this is a role that Ebony plays. People look up to her. People, she's a leader, and I'm like, first of all, I love that you turned your dining room into this classroom. I think it's so cool, so different, and I can also see how something so innovative and different like that could also, yes, cause our children to then rely even more on us. Here's mom, the teacher, but at the same time, I mean, we are their teachers, right? We're their guides and all the things, but regardless, I see you, it's a strength that you have this ability to lead others and people look up to you for guidance. Um, so yeah, just wanted to point that out, but keep going.
Thank you. So you talked about turning that dining room into a learning space. What I
Yeah.
didn't do in that moment, and I know, is I did not fully evaluate the needs of my children. For
Mm,
me, my children needed to learn. They needed to go to school. I didn't even think. They've just been pulled out of everything, right? They've been pulled away from everything. So I'd be fussing at my daughter, like, get out of the bed and come downstairs. You're not going to class in your bedroom. Come downstairs. I got a desk, blah, blah, blah.
oh, I
What she
see.
needed in that moment was not that. She needed someone to understand that I can't see my friends. Like, and she was, when the pandemic hit, she was in one of those transition years. She had just started the ninth grade. It was huge for her, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I can't be with my friends. I can't go to tryouts. I can't be on teams. I can't. She
Yeah.
started when the pandemic hit. And this, for me, it was like when it blew me away when she said it. When the pandemic hit, she had just started high school. When she was able to go back to school, she was driving. Because they spent a year and a half out of
Mm-hmm.
school, plus another summer. And then by the time she went back, she was a junior. You
Mm-hmm.
know, she needed more, she needed to learn, but she needed more than just that. Right. My son had just started middle school. He was in the sixth grade. He needed more than just to learn. So I was busy solving problems, but I had not taken the time
Mm-hmm.
to fully analyze and understand all the problems that we had.
So let's talk. So this is a good point of conversation. In my time of helping and doing my own healing work myself, those of us that tend to be high achievers, um, the Instagram page that hosts all of my episodes for these podcasts, it's called a healthy high performer because that is what we tend to gravitate towards, and yes, there comes a point where you're so in your executive functioning brain that there's not so much room because you're not pausing or stopping or resting. There's not a lot of room for empathy, love, compassion, understanding, because we're always on the go, go, go. So tell us more about how pausing has allowed you to become, I'm going to make an educated guess, but please correct me if I'm wrong, probably helped you become an even better mother and wife to your family.
Absolutely. It has allowed me to literally hear. I was listening, but I would hear on the surface,
Yeah.
right? I would hear what people said on the surface, and I would go and I would do it and I would take care of it. But it has allowed me to really hear, what is happening when my children are talking, when my husband is talking. It's allowed me to stop and ask questions like, what do you really mean? Like, when you
Mhm.
say that,
Yes.
what do you really mean? There's more to it than the question of, well, are you cooking breakfast today?
Hmm.
Because the reality is, I don't have little kids anymore.
Hmm.
My husband and I have been together 23 years. He knows I don't cook every day.
Hmm.
So sometimes it's like, okay, he's asking because he needs his wife. He
Hmm.
needs me to stop and have some time with him.
Hmm.
So, there's the question of, hey, are you running out? Are you running late? Or you're going to be home today? What's going on so that I can better evaluate what I need to provide as a wife and a mother. It's
Yes.
also helped me to communicate better to them my needs, right?
Yes.
This morning, I'll tell you. So one of the things I talk about in the book, anybody who knows me for any amount of time knows that I have a ridiculous hair appointment. My hair appointment is at 5:30 in the morning on
Wow.
Fridays.
Okay.
Right? 5:30 in the morning. But when I go there, there's my hairstylist, me, there's a barber there, and he cuts a gentleman's hair at the same time, right? And then there's another gentleman that comes in. So typically there are five of us there. Depending on how long I stay there, there'll be a sixth person that comes in. And that is really a space just for me. I say we solve the world's problems, right? And so I've kept that appointment for years, and I was there this morning. I keep it for for me. And so the question came up, are you coming home to take our son, our youngest son to school today? And my thought was, I'm not coming home to take him to school. Like, no, I get my hair done on Friday at 5:30 in the morning. And it was like, nope, stop and have a conversation. And I did. And I said, I know that now I have more flexibility because we've changed some things, but this is important to me. And so even though the flexibility has changed, I need this couple of hours on Friday morning
Yes.
just for me. And
Mhm.
this is what I need from you as husband. This is what I need from you as son. Don't leave your backpack in my car on
Mhm.
Thursday night because I'm going to be gone.
Mhm.
Don't call me and say, are you taking the kid to school? Because no, you need to plan to do it. Arrange your schedule.
Mhm.
And not in that way, but to just
Yes.
have that conversation so they can hear me as well. So I think the pause has done that. It's allowed me to hear them and it's allowed me to communicate to them in a way that they can hear me.
Hey, mamas, let me ask you this. Do you dream of starting your own business but feel overwhelmed by where to begin? You're not alone, and that's exactly why I created our free WhatsApp group, Balancing Business and Babies, a safe space for moms like you who are ready to take that first step towards entrepreneurship while balancing the beautiful chaos of motherhood. Inside, you'll find daily mindset shifts and tips, encouragement from women on the same journey, and bi weekly free community calls. Whether you are still in the dreaming phase or ready to take action, this group is here to support you every step of the way. And the best part? It's totally free. Just click the link in the show notes below to join. Mama, your dreams are very much possible, and you don't have to do it alone. Let's build your vision together, and I'll see you in the group inside. I've counseled so many women that have this high energy or like, achieving boss mode all the time that everyone in their world kind of unknowingly they kind of everybody gets a place in the way that the family runs as a dynamic. And if mom's always hustling and being the leader and doing all the things, it's like, yeah, people are just going to naturally follow your lead, right? But
Yep.
also to a point where it could be a fault where now they depend on you for all the things, right? Husbands included.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I want to congratulate you for pausing in that moment when your husband asked you, "Are you gonna, drop your our son off to school?" You could have been passive aggressive and said, "Absolutely not. You know that I get my hair done on Friday." It's like, why would you even ask that question? And maybe that's happened in the past, but I'm sharing this example because
Yes.
yeah, so many women just, you're people in general, you're busy doing your own thing. And it's like, how could you not know this thing? Like, get it together. And yeah, he was maybe asking for a different reason. Doesn't We don't know. We can't read their minds, anyone's mind for that matter. And so the reflective question of asking, or in this case for you, expressing, I know that I have a much more flexible schedule now, but this moment of my week, my Friday mornings are so essential to me for whatever reasons. Expressing that and letting your family know through a soft, loving tone that this is what mom/wife needs at this time. And it's so important to me. It's a perfect example of healthy communication skills, because a lot of the times we think we're communicating, but you're just kind of being mean, to be frank, and you're not
Yeah.
connecting.
Yeah. And the reality is that I also understand my husband needs something from me.
Hmm.
He needs something. And so we need to continue the conversation, right? I need my Friday mornings. I need you to be there to make sure that that gets facilitated. But what is it that you need from me, right? So that I'm not forgetting that as my husband, he has needs as well. And one of the things that he's expressed to me is like, I need to be your first thought in the morning, right? And so I know he just wants his wife in the morning. So let's have this conversation. In 2 weeks, there are 14 days. I'm asking for one. And then the other 13, I'll give to you. And what he could be communicating is the last 13, I haven't been your first thought. So I'm calling you to be your first thought, right? So now I recognize, and it has me thinking, what have you been doing in the morning, right? Are you engaging with your husband, having conversation with your husband, cutting the world off in the morning until wife and husband have had conversations together about the day and spent some time together. And if I think about it and I reflect, I haven't. And he deserves that, right? Because that's a need of his.
Hmm.
So healthy conversation helps you to understand each other, but it's just a start because then you gotta execute on it, right?
Yes. And you know, the beautiful thing about pausing and getting to know oneself is that the more you get to know yourself, the better you're able to understand other people. Of course,
For
including your
sure.
family and like work environment, everybody, right? If you don't know your inner depths of insecurities, guilt, shame, what causes your anxiety, how are you possibly going to understand that of other people, right? And knowing ourselves better allows us to be more humane individuals, those that can carry more empathy and understanding towards how somebody else might be feeling. Because I don't know who your husband is, but in this context, it doesn't really matter. He's asking for something, right?
Correct.
And at the core of everyone's being, nobody's trying to be annoying. No one's a bad person. Even when people do, and listen, as a therapist, I have worked in amazing institutions, different places where people do really quote unquote bad things. And when
Yes.
you really get to know somebody, nobody wants to be a bad person. No one's trying to be um, annoying, for lack of better words, you know? And so having the reflective experiences maybe throughout your therapeutic process, your healing journey, then being able to shed that compassion and love. Because what you're doing to self, what people don't understand on a healing journey, is you're showing yourself time and energy.
Yeah.
And if we're all trying to heal to some capacity our inner child, think about children. I have two little ones, I have a 2 and a 3-year-old. And so all they're asking from me is time,
Yeah.
just time.
Yeah.
Right. And if you
Yep.
think about all individuals, that's what all individuals also crave. We go back to the basics, right?
Yeah.
Time, energy, not us on our phones scrolling away. And like, I'm at fault for it. Literally, me and my husband the other day were just talking about how, damn, like how many times are the kids asking us questions? And because we both work from home, I'm running my own business, all the things. And it's like, how many times are we answering while we're also multitasking, doing something on our cell phone? Right. And what's the
How
mention?
many times have you not even heard the question?
Mm. Mhm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
There, um, there have been times that I literally have been having a conversation with someone and doing something else, and it
Mhm.
gets quiet, and I look up and I realize they realize you're not listening to me anyway. So they stop talking,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, uh-oh, they figured it out.
Yes,
They
yes.
need my attention.
Yeah. So just yes, being present, right? Before technology in this fast-paced age kind of took over where everything has to be fast, everything's at the fingertips. I share a lot of my storytelling about me and my family are from New York, but we moved, well, me
Mhm.
and my husband are from New York. Our kids were born here. But now we live in South Carolina. So we're in the South now. And things are much slower here. It took a lot of adjusting. And one thing that just happened to us this week was even another lesson. We had these great two construction or contract workers come to our home to help us build like an electric fireplace. They did a phenomenal,
Uh-huh.
but coming from New York, things move really quickly. And I think in New York, or just the way that I was raised, like I've learned to live life like 10 steps ahead. It's like, okay, if I'm gonna do this project, then I know I'm gonna have to need X equipment, da da da, whatever. And these two men came into our home and they did a phenomenal job. Um, it took longer than I expected. Right? They were in our home for about 5 days, which I thought would be like a 1 to 2 day project.
Right.
And maybe I don't know much about this. This is our first home that's a blank canvas where we actually get to build things on it.
Okay.
So I'm not too well versed in how long these projects actually take, but I could see myself coming up and down the stairs in between my work calls and being like, "What's being done here?"
Right.
What's happening? How come the wood hasn't been pre-chopped? Why are they just doing this now? And
Yes.
then I caught myself and I'm like, okay, Julissa, you're living in the South. Like maybe this is just how things run over here, and that's okay. And then my head was thinking, or my mind was thinking, well, what's the rush? Why are you rushing it? You're working upstairs anyway. The kid, like nothing really changes. The kids are getting this fun interaction where they're like, oh, we're talking to the workers all day, every day. And it's like, okay, like, so what's really the problem here? And just the notion for me again of like, why does everything have to be done so quickly? Why does
Yes.
quick mean efficient and slow means that you're not good at something? That was a story that I was saying in my head,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yep.
just to the points that we were talking about before, I know all of these things. In fact, for
Mhm.
a large part of my career, being a clinical mental health counselor, I would feel guilty of like, why am I still struggling with these things if I know better? Right. And the reality is just that this is, like you said, a forever journey of challenging the thoughts that kind of keep us entrapped, and being open to continuously working on them over and over again as time goes on.
Yeah. It just because you know something doesn't mean that you instantly can execute on it, right? It's no different than the person that maybe struggles with food, right? And just because you know that you should choose the salad over the fried whatever doesn't mean that you will. You know it, but understanding yourself helps you at least get closer, right? And I use that example for myself because I made a post the other day to stop myself from eating. I literally picked up my phone and posted because then I could interact with people online. I was sitting at a bowling alley and the two people next to me were eating fried okra. I don't even like okra, Jaleesa. I hate okra, but it was fried, and there's just something about the smell of fried food that makes you want to have food. And I know I don't need it. And so I literally picked up my phone and quick went to social media and I was like, what is it about the fact? What is it about fried food that makes you just want to eat food? Right.
Mm,
And so I was able to interact and laugh with some folks online and that helped me. But there have been other times where I smell it and I get up and I go and get some chicken wings because you just smell it. It's a forever journey. It really is. Healing is a forever journey.
absolutely. I want to ask you one more question to kind of tie in everything that we were talking about and more on the corporate side of things. So, we spoke about how pausing helps so much, helps us connect more internally to then help us connect outwardly through love and empathy for our family. In the corporate or work setting, I know that you've done a lot of work with leaders through your coaching and workshops. And can you share what are the most common challenges that you've seen that they face, and how does pausing help them overcome it?
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenge, and I would hear it constantly, is about balance. People
Mm,
want to know how do I balance all of the things? And my answer is I don't think you can. I think that balance is a facade because the sheer definition of balance tells us that you're giving equal attention to everything. That's what balance is. I
mhm.
don't think you can balance everything. I think you can prioritize and you can reprioritize. And then I think you have to be okay with what those priorities are.
Mm.
My number one priority in life is my family, but that doesn't mean that every day they're my number one priority. And I have to be okay with that. If my kids are clothed, fed, they're not in danger, and everything is okay,
Mhm.
it's all right if they don't, if I go focus on me for a
Mhm.
couple hours. It's
Mhm.
okay if I go on the business trip.
Mhm.
Um, I
Mm.
think the probably the second biggest problem, especially for mothers, and I would assume fathers as well, but I don't know. I don't have that experience, but I talk to a lot of moms, is that
Yeah.
guilt of I'm
Yes.
over here. I like being over here, right? I
Mhm.
like building my career. I like who I am in
Yeah.
this space, but
Yeah.
it means that I'm not with my kids 24 hours a day. And I think you have to be okay with that. Everybody's journey is different. Children are extremely resilient. And I don't think we talk to kids enough. We don't give them enough credit for understanding.
Mm.
When I started talking to my kids about my career, when I started talking to my kids, and of course, at 2, maybe
Mhm.
they can't
Yeah.
process it, right? But as they get a little older, they
Mhm.
understand,
Mhm.
right? And maybe not deeply, but
Mhm.
they understand, they get the concept that mom goes to work to make money, and this
Absolutely.
money helps us do X, Y, and Z. And so
Absolutely.
I think talking to them, letting them know you have good days at work and you have bad days is
Mm.
super helpful. I think letting them know that some days you have long days and some days you have short days is helpful. I started allowing my children, my mom still thinks this is crazy, but I realized that every once in a while, I just needed a mental health day.
Yeah.
I just needed to not go to work, right?
Absolutely. Mhm.
And the first time my daughter said it to me, like, I just need a mental health day. I just need to not go to school. It kind of caught me like, no, you go to school. We grew up, you go to school. Unless like your leg is hanging off, you go to
Yeah.
school.
Yeah.
And I realized like,
Mhm.
no, they're little individuals as well. Like she needs a day. And so now I only have one that is still in school, but um I support that for them. I communicate with them when that is what is going on with me. And so they're very in tune. So I
Mhm.
think the balance conversation is like balance doesn't exist. Priorities do. So you
Mm.
decide what your priority for the day is in what order. And then when you take a look at that guilt feeling, have conversations because children will understand and they will tell you what they need. And
Mhm.
so you answer their need and you can tell them what you need. And you
Mhm.
would be surprised
Mhm.
how they answer those needs for you because they absolutely will in
Yeah.
their own way.
Yeah, and they care, right? Like my kids are so
Do.
young, and even at this young age of 2 and 3, they know they're like, oh, mommy's upstairs on her work calls. I'm like, yeah, that's
Mhm.
what we're doing, right? Or dad's
Yep.
upstairs working on a ticket. And it's like, yep, that's what he's doing. And the word balance, yes, yes, I've also come to learn. I think we have different definitions for it, and that's what I think gets people kind of like jumbled up over it. Maybe a better word is juggling, right? Like
Yeah.
juggling motherhood and careers and or businesses. No, not everything can have equal energy. It's impossible.
Yeah.
It's also not fair to do that all the
Mm.
time, right? And understanding, yes, what takes priority and putting that first and making sure that it feels good for you. It feels good for your household. It feels good for your family for this period of time. I think
Yeah.
clarity and certainty, which helps when you pause, is what is needed for
Yeah.
most people. Of
Yeah.
like, what do I really want in this stage of my life? And
Yes.
how is that going to make me feel? And then move forward with that.
Yes. A
Um,
great example. My daughter used to run track. And my children were very active. And so one of the things that I would do, I'd get a schedule from a extracurricular activity, put everything on my calendar, talk to whoever my leader was. Like these days, I might need to leave early or whatever, because even though I was working, I was going to be at my children's extracurricular activities. And I talked to my kids like, hey, mommy has to schedule this stuff. So I get the moment you get a schedule from a coach, I need your schedule. And
Mm,
this is why. And we did have that conversation. And my daughter said to me one day, yeah, don't worry about this one. Like, this isn't even a big meet. I don't need you to be there. I don't have any competition. And I don't want you to stress. And she could feel the stress. I don't want you to stress trying to get here. My son to this day will say, yep, if you could come to these matches, that would be great. These others, they're not a big deal.
that's beautiful.
They'll let you know, like, hey, it's okay if you miss this one. Like, I don't even really care about this one.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that communication is just so important. It helps you. It helps you
Yeah.
in that juggling act.
Yes. I love that. Yeah. Open communication, just like we would with our partners, right?
Yes.
Absolutely love it. So thank you. This has been an amazing conversation, Ebony. I want to hold some space to ask you, girlie, as we close this episode, as I do in every episode, anything that's been on your heart, your mind. It could be about anything. It could be about business, mental health, partnership, children that you have been currently working on, and would either like some guidance or just have the a safe space to reflect on what has been hard for you at this time.
Yeah, I love this question, right? Because we talked about it being a forever journey. So
Mhm.
having young adults right now,
Mhm.
the what is really challenging for me, and I work through on a regular basis, is recognizing that they're their own individuals and they have their own life to live, even though I may have had a dream or vision for them and for their lives. They
Mhm.
are adults and they get to make those decisions. And sometimes the decisions are not the decisions that I would make. And I have to be okay with that. I have a soon to be, gosh, in 2 weeks, a 24-year-old
Mhm.
um, and a 19-year-old that's soon to be 20, and they make decisions that I wouldn't make. The reality is they're just decisions I wouldn't make. It's not like they're going out doing harm to people or causing problems in the world. They're just charting their own path. And so this part of motherhood is very different for me, right? It's when your kids are like, yeah, no, that's great. That was great for you. I'm not doing that. And
Yeah.
you're like, wait a minute. And you can't, you can't make that decision for them anymore. That is a really different space to
Mm.
be in. And so I would say that that right now is challenging for me because I want to make all the calls. I want to make all the decisions I did before. But
Yeah.
I recognize I got to have faith that I have instilled in them the things that needed to be instilled in them and they will make the decisions that are right for them.
Mhm.
I did it to my mom. I know some of the decisions I made. My mom was at home thinking, what in the world is this girl thinking? Right. But when you're on the other side, it is very challenging. And it's just
Yeah.
because you love so hard.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's so beautiful to see the different stages of motherhood. I ran a motherhood program for a long time, and I would have moms of all different ages of children, adult children, and the beautiful thing about motherhood is that it's ever evolving. You already stated it, but yeah, the main thing that is happening here is that you're transitioning in your role as mother as your kids are getting
Yeah.
older, right? Where it's yes, you went from handling every little thing to then children getting to be more independent. It's like thank God. Now you can do things
Yeah.
yourself. And then it turns into holy crap, you can do a lot of things by yourself, and I actually don't really have much say in this any longer, right?
Yes.
And so maybe
Yes.
coming to the perspective shift, identity shift of what does my role as mother look like now that I do have adult children?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is very different, right?
Yeah.
One that is out of the house, one that is saying, "Yep, I'll be leaving shortly." It's
Mhm.
like, oh goodness, my children will be in the world. But yeah, what does that look like?
Mhm.
And I think what I have to transition to is it needs to look like pride. You've raised children who can
Yes.
care for themselves.
Congrats to you, Mama. Yes.
Thank you. Even if they don't live where you would choose, right? You're looking at two apartments and you're like, this is the obvious choice. And they're like, I'm going over here. Um, they made the decision and they're taking care of themselves, or this is the career. And you're like, this is the obvious choice based on your skill set. And they're like, no, this is what I love. And you're like, oh, okay.
Mm,
Um, I think you just have to have pride that you've raised, I've raised children that will make their own decisions,
mm.
and I've gotta get to a point where I love that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so hard. I can't even imagine. That's so hard.
Yes, it is.
Um,
You're like, I still want to lay your clothes out in the morning for you to
yeah,
put them on and do what I ask you to do.
yeah. Oh my goodness. It's just I think again, motherhood is so beautifully complex and just
Yes.
beautiful. I have a beautiful nail technician who I get my nail done almost every 2 weeks, and she's a mother of three adult women, and she was
Mm,
expressing to me how I think her youngest was getting married, and the grief that she was experiencing in fast changes with the
yes.
marriage came a quick move to a different, I believe, no, not a different country, but I think the husband to be works, or husband now works out of the country a lot, so that happens now. She's going to be joining. To
Yeah.
make a long story short, she was grieving about the loss of the relationship and proximity that she has had with her for
Yes.
30 years. And
Yes.
now this woman, grown woman, moving away and not being there for Christmas for the first time.
Mm, yes.
Right. And
Yes.
so, it made me think about me. Like, it just,
Yeah.
motherhood is just like this thing that never ends, right? Even when we become adults, and like I was a daughter that moved away, right? And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like what did that do to my, to my family, to my
Mm,
mom? And it just, being a mother, being a daughter, right? You just have so many different perspectives now, and
yes.
it's
Absolutely.
like it's beautiful, it's complex, it has so many layers.
So many layers. So many layers. But that's the beauty of it, right? You can continue to evolve,
Yeah.
continue to learn. It is yet another journey that is a forever journey, and that is motherhood. It does not end.
Absolutely. Ebony, it has been a pleasure speaking to you. I think our listeners have learned so much, especially those of us, and those tend to be the majority of my listeners, who are trying to just smush so much into their days and find clarity in what their next move is. Where can they purchase your book?
Yes, the book can be purchased on my website, which is drebonystone.com. It is also available on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles online. Anywhere you buy books online, you can find the book online. But also, because I recognize that those busy people don't often have time to read, there is an Audible book out there, an audio book out there that you can find on Audible as well. Yep.
Beautiful. Love that. All of those links will be provided in our show notes, so you can go right there ahead and purchase your copy. Ebony, thank you so much for joining our podcast today. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Any last words of advice before we close today's episode?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. But secondly, I would say the biggest advice I have for everyone is first to pause and second to give yourself grace.
Hmm, I love that.
Thank
All
you.
right, you guys, thank you for joining us, and we will talk soon. Bye for now. Thank you for joining me today on Mindset Mastery Podcast. I hope today's conversation inspired you to embrace your own journey of balancing motherhood and entrepreneurship. Remember, it's all about mastering your mindset to create a life of success and fulfillment in both areas. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, share it with a friend, and leave a review. Your support helps us reach more incredible moms just like you. Until next time, keep showing up, keep growing, and mastering your mindset.